Hi, I'm JP, and in this video, I'm going to explain what long-term care is, show you how it can wipe out your life savings, and place an enormous burden on your children. So when someone embarks on the quest of climbing Mount Everest, most people would say that the ultimate goal is to summit, right? Well, according to an article by the British Medical Journal, only 15% of deaths that occurred on the Himalayan mountain happened during the climb, while 85% of the deaths happened on the descent. So the real ultimate goal when climbing Mount Everest really is to make it back down safely. Dr. R. Douglas Fields, Chief of Nervous System Development at the National Institute of Health, says, quote, "That's actually a common rule in climbing, that more people die coming down than going up." He goes on to say, "You are spent getting to the top. You get tired. You're exhausted." You're spent getting to the top? You get tired? And you're exhausted? What does that sound like to you? That's right. Sounds a lot like retirement, doesn't it? See, when it comes to planning for retirement, we've become experts on qualified employer plans, experts on having diversified portfolios, stocks, bonds, and ways to grow our money, right? And by the way, there's an app for all that nowadays. There is no shortage of online investment services to help you do it yourself. The thing is that much like climbing Mount Everest, the ultimate goal of retirement planning isn't just to accumulate a big pile of money. It's to have a sustainable financial plan that can see us all the way through the journey and help us fund longevity and manage the risks in retirement. In other words, help us make it safely down the mountain. So let's talk about retirement. And to start off, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a few seconds and just picture what retirement looks like for you. Now, did you see yourself maybe on the golf course? Maybe traveling to Paris? Did you see yourself spending time with your loved ones, with your children, your grandchildren, your spouse? Maybe you saw yourself staying fit, staying active. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you saw yourselves in a nursing home? Did you see yourself needing help getting up from your bed and getting dressed? The reality is that while we hope to do all these wonderful things like play, travel, enjoy good health, the longer we live, there is a greater likelihood for chronic health conditions that can have a severe impact not only on our family, but on our retirement income. I don't think it's a great secret anymore that due to the advance of tech and medical science, Americans are living longer lives. The cancers and heart conditions that would have killed us in the past are now treatable and no longer the threat that they once were. So it's precisely because we are living longer that we are faced with increasing challenges that need to be planned for. Longevity has become a risk multiplier. You see, the longer we live, the more income we will need to support our retirement lifestyle. The longer we live, the greater impact a low interest rate environment can have on our fixed income. The longer we live, the greater risk market conditions and sequence of returns can have on our portfolio. Let me put it to you this way. If I retire at 65 and I just drop dead at 68, it doesn't matter if I had enough income saved or how badly interest rates and the markets performed. I didn't live long enough. But the longer I live, all these issues can become a greater risk. Not least of which is the focus of our attention in this video, which is the risk of extended healthcare costs. And I will also add to that the impact on unpaid family caregivers, or as I call them, free family labor. Okay, now raise your hand if you have a long-term care plan. Okay, so everyone should have raised their hands, right? If you felt like, yeah, no, JP, I don't have a long-term care plan, believe me, you do. You see, when you have not set up a formal plan, you still have a plan. It just happens to be the default plan, or what I call the no plan plan. And the no plan plan may not be the one you really want. So that's why I put this video together for you. That's why your family attorneys brought it up when you got your estate plan done. Your CPA has talked to you about it. Your friends and even your coworkers are talking about it. So what is long-term care? Long-term care involves services designed to meet a person's health or personal care needs during a short or long period of time. These services help people live as independently and safely as possible when they can no longer perform everyday activities on their own. The most common type of long-term care is personal care, that is, help with activities of daily living, or ADLs. And those are bathing, eating, transferring, dressing, toileting, and continence. People often need long-term care when they have a serious ongoing health condition or disability, and the need for long-term care can arise suddenly, such as after a heart attack or stroke. Most often, however, it develops gradually as people get older and frailer, or as an illness or disability gets worse. Now, oftentimes people hear the phrase long-term care, and what's the first thing that pops into their head? A nursing home, right? And although long-term care is provided in different places by different caregivers depending on a person's needs, most long-term care is actually provided at home by unpaid family members, or as I call them, free family labor, and or by friends. And by the way, now to make matters worse for the assisted living industry, institutions like nursing homes and residential care facilities are being negatively impacted by the pandemic. You know, and that's a tough personal call. I mean, if you think about your own personal situation, would you rather receive care at home or in a nursing home during a pandemic? It's a tough call. Now, the combination of 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 and entering retirement every single day for the next 20 years, along with the fact that 70% of them will become cognitively impaired or unable to complete dressing, bathing, or eating over their lifetimes, has created a greater need to have the long-term care conversation with our families. And one of the biggest reasons for that conversation is that, among other things, long-term care is fundamentally an income problem. Long-term care can create an enormous income gap during your retirement because it can cause a sudden increase in your expenses. So think of it this way. What can cause my expenses to increase in retirement? So imagine that I'm 75 years old and my wife and I have been living comfortably on a budget of $100,000 a year. And one day my financial guy, we'll call him Larry. So Larry is sitting at his desk one day and he gets a call from my wife. Larry's glad to hear from us and says, "What's up?" My wife then tells Larry that we're going to have to start taking an additional 50 to 70% more from our retirement savings every year in addition to the $100,000. And Larry's like, "What happened?" Well, what happened is that 2 years after wondering why I kept leaving the car keys in the fridge, we were finally given the diagnosis that I have Alzheimer's, and the cost for my care would mean a significant increase in our expenses. And this is an important point, because a severe cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's is no small isolated health condition that is rare and temporary. According to the Alzheimer's Association, more than 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia. Alzheimer's kills more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. Okay, so what are those long-term care cost numbers? Well, in my state of California, according to a cost of care survey, the average cost for home health care in 2019 was just over $64,000 a year. And parenthetically, home health care falls under the more affordable end of the care spectrum, depending on the level and hours of care. Nursing homes, on the other hand, with semi-private and private rooms, along with memory care facilities, can run significantly higher costs. Now, if you add just a 4% rate of inflation and you're 65 years old today, in just 10 years, you can expect the price tag to go up to almost $100,000. If you're 55 watching this video, in 20 years, you could be facing a $140,000 a year sudden increase in expenses to pay for care. Now, to give you a better idea of what impact this could have on your retirement savings, here's an example using $200 a day in care expenses. Keep in mind that this is an average starting point with no inflation added. At $200 a day for 3 years, you'd be funding $216,000 from your personal retirement assets. Now, we mentioned Alzheimer's earlier. If the care you need is related to a cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's, the cost would skyrocket and could potentially need to be funded for a longer period of time. So as an example, for $7,000 a month, an 8-year need for care could cost over $650,000. You see, according to the Alzheimer's Association, people aged 65 and older survive an average of between 4 to 8 years after a diagnosis of Alzheimer's dementia, and some live as long as 20 years with Alzheimer's. Now, when it comes to paying for long-term care, there are generally three main ways to do it. The first is to use your own assets. The second is to have the government pay for it. And finally, you can also use money from private insurance benefits. Now, when we talk about self-funding, I generally educate my clients as to why this is the most expensive way to pay for care. Because you're talking about paying retail cost and maybe even more, due in part to taxes that may need to be paid to access funds wrapped up in qualified retirement plans. Not to mention the fact that you also run the risk of starting to tap into your portfolio's principal and also run out of gains. Now, if you're rich and feel like, you know what, I can afford a long-term care event, you're probably right. And this is America, so you can choose to be the world's only insurance company of one and self-insure your own cost of care. My question is though, why would you want to pay retail cost? I mean, if you were looking to buy the latest model Mercedes and I sold it to you for 50% off, would you get mad and go somewhere else to pay full price? But I digress. And so when considering self-funding, the first thing to do is to take inventory of what family resources are available and ask a series of tough questions. Now, some of those questions include, how much guaranteed income do you have for retirement? Do you know how much long-term care services cost in your area? What are your current assets? Which assets would you use to pay for care? Cash, CDs, stocks, a reverse mortgage, qualified retirement plans? And what are the potential tax liquidity consequences that may arise if you use those assets? Now, second on the list of how to pay for long-term care are government programs. And it's important to point out that a common misconception is that Medicare will pay for long-term care. According to surveys, 70% of adults incorrectly believe that Medicare will cover the cost of long-term care events. In reality, though, the government is clear about the issue. In their Social Security statement that workers have access to, it states in no uncertain terms on page 4 that Medicare does not pay for long-term care, so you may want to consider options for private insurance. I like their, oh, by the way, it's probably going to be a lot, so you may want to consider options for private insurance. So what does Medicare actually pay for? Medicare pays for the first 100 days of acute care and limited home care that is medically necessary and carried out by licensed medical professionals. So you first have to have Part A, required skilled care by licensed professionals at a skilled nursing facility or a SNF. You have to have a qualifying hospital stay with 3-night minimum because checkout doesn't count. You have to have a doctor recommendation. And from days 1 through 20, you pay 0 for each benefit period. Days 21 through 100, you pay $176 coinsurance a day for each benefit period. And from days 101 and beyond, you're on the hook for all costs. The other government program that actually does pay for long-term care is Medicaid, or Medi-Cal here in California. This program, however, is designed to help folks with limited income and resources. Medicaid has strict income requirements, asset requirements, function requirements that are stricter than private insurance when it comes to ADLs, citizenship requirements, possible share of cost depending on income, and Medicaid also has an estate recovery program in which Medicaid can take your assets from your children as repayment of care of services that were provided to the recipient and paid by Medicaid. And then after you do qualify, facilities near your family may not have enough beds. The third method of funding are insurance and asset-based leveraging strategies. And those are life insurance with chronic illness riders, standalone long-term care insurance, asset-based hybrid life insurance with linked benefits, and asset-based hybrid deferred annuities also with linked benefits. Now, standalone and asset-based hybrid benefits generally pay for care coordination and caregiver training, care in all levels of long-term care facilities, hospice care, adult daycare, respite care, care in assisted living facility, home health care and homemaker services, bed reservation, generally up to 30 days, so if you need to go to the hospital They'll reserve your bed for up to 30 days generally, supportive equipment, and international facility coverage depending on the carrier. Now, it's too much information to try to squeeze into just one video, but in another video, I will go deeper into how these planning strategies can be great ways to protect your retirement portfolio as well as your family from being impacted with having to actually provide your care. And this is actually a perfect segue to talk a little bit about the human cost that long-term care can have on unpaid family caregivers on top of the financial burden. So according to the Family Caregiver Alliance regarding caregiver health, estimates show that between 40 to 70% of caregivers have clinically significant symptoms of depression, with an approximately 1/4 to 1/2 of these caregivers meeting the diagnostic criteria for major depression. Caregivers have higher levels of stress than non-caregivers, and they also describe feeling frustrated, angry, drained, guilty, or helpless as a result of providing care. The physical stress of caregiving can affect the physical health of the caregiver, especially when providing care for someone who cannot transfer him or herself out of bed, walk, or bathe without assistance. These are just a few examples in a long list of physical, emotional, and mental strains, as well as risks to family caregivers. So we've talked about the money, the potential negative impact on your savings that an unexpected long-term care event can have on your bottom line, exactly at a time when you are depending on a set level of fixed income assets allocated for retirement. So as we get ready to end this video, I want you to take a moment to think about the people in your life, your children, your spouse, or your partner, those that could someday be on the other side of that phone call when mom, dad, or your doctor calls to say your partner had a stroke or dad has Alzheimer's. Who in your life is that person that is going to jump into action and become your caregiver or your care manager? Because there is a significant difference in what role they will play. It may be up to you now to decide whether you want them to manage your care or actually provide your care. See, approximately 43.5 million caregivers have provided unpaid care to an adult or child in the last 12 months. And upwards of 75% of all caregivers are female and may spend as much as 50% more time providing care than males. So it's important to recognize that relying on free family labor can be an option, but not one without severe complications to the lives of those who provide the care. If you have children, for example, will the boys be willing to help out as much as their sisters? Where does your care fit into their busy schedule? Have you talked to them about what exactly you want them to do for you? These are important questions to have with the family in advance. And by the way, it is so important to have your legal affairs in order by the time that you retire. So if you've not made time to get with an estate planning attorney, I would highly recommend seeking one out. And you might say, but JP, estate planning, that's for rich people. No, it's not. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you own property? Do you want your family to wait for probate in order to receive their inheritance? Do you want them to fight over their inheritance? Have you equalized the things that you're passing on to them? Do you have a small business? Do you want your family to fight over the decision of keeping you on a respirator? No, my friend, you don't need to be rich to get your affairs in order. I always tell my clients, you don't need to be rich to get your affairs in order. You just need to live in California. Plus, if you're watching this during the quarantine, you have no excuse. This is the perfect time to Zoom your way or Google or FaceTime your way to your friendly neighborhood attorney. And that pretty much covers the basics on long-term care planning. In the next video, I'm going to talk to you about leveraging strategies that folks interested in protecting their family and portfolio are using to take the long-term care risk off the table in retirement. If you found value in this video, please like it, share it with family, friends, clients, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell in order to receive updates with other videos about retirement planning. Thank you for visiting with me today. See you next time.